like ideate, like getting all the stakeholders together, like especially the product manager who is going to give you the
Okay,
ideas
I've
behind
just
this project.
started the recording just to let you know. And yeah, let's proceed. So, yeah, you were saying that you have already, like, what is your take on project initiation and how you have seen it done in your organization?
So project initiation, I would say, like I haven't done it myself, but
Mm-hmm.
one thing I have seen is the product manager comes up with an idea that
Mm-hmm.
has to be broken up into different projects maybe,
Mm-hmm.
and this project would have a definite scope. That is where we will define it in the project initiation, and bring in different stakeholders to determine how feasible it is and what is the um, and getting the authorization to actually get this project running and started. And is if there is something that I actually missed out, please fill me the gaps. And
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, I would say somewhat correct. I will tell you how we probably look at a project initiation. This is basically why we do it is it is the foundation of a successful project, right? uh,
mhm,
Basically when I say foundation, it's like if you're building a house, you want the foundation to be very strong, right? So if anything
mhm,
happens, the house doesn't collapse, it's not shaky, right? So that is the essence of what we're doing in initiations. So
mhm,
what we will explore is, in this lecture, is what is the importance of initiation. Are there any metrics used? Are there any documents that are formed? Right? And we will also cover the questions. And just to kind of make you understand with examples and everything, I will use the example of Book My Show, which is basically
mhm,
an application where we go and we book cinema tickets and any event that is happening around town. Right? So that is a running example that I will take throughout project management. So this is one of our projects, and we'll take it through each of the phase. So we'll learn better
mhm.
if we have an example. So this is the running example I'll be starting with.
Yeah, there is something that is actually covering your part of your, yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Right. So first things first, why project initiation matters. We said that yes, it's the foundation of our project, but like detailing down on it, why is it important is we are establishing clarity early on. And how we are establishing clarity is first we are clearing out the goal. Why are we doing this project? What is the definition of success for us? We get these questions answered during this phase, and then not just answered, we define it very clearly in our documents, and we get the verification from everybody, the confirmation from everybody. So at the end of your project, nobody can say it was a failure or you didn't do your work correctly, because at the starting you got confirmation from everybody that in 6 months time, in 1 year's time, if I am able to do this, that means my project is successful. So we don't basically leave anything to chance. We're covering everything here. Okay,
Yeah.
right? So first thing is we are
So
confirming everything. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
when you
Questions.
say clarity, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is the clarity on this entire project. Like what's, like who is involved? What's the scope of it?
Yeah. So basically,
And
when I say
what's the
clarity,
outcome? Yeah.
so when I say clarity, it means why are we doing this project? Like, what is the business need? Because that's the main thing that's going to be deciding how you take on this project. Then,
Mhm.
what makes the project successful? Uh, what is in the project? What is out of the scope of the project? Those things are defined at this point of time, right?
Mhm.
And we're not kind of going into any sort of details in the initiation part, because
Mhm.
right now we're just talking about, like, business cases and very high level, because we haven't done any sort of detailing down. That happens in the planning part. Right now,
Mhm.
why are we doing this phase is to understand the feasibility. Should we proceed with this project or not?
Mm.
Okay, so that is our main goal here.
Mm. Prevents define success. Okay.
Right. Now let's first of all, I told you we'll get clarity on the goal of the project. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
firstly, every project starts because something was wrong. Something would probably need some sort of an improvement, right? Maybe a process is slow, maybe your customers are not happy, or maybe there's a new opportunity in the market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, when we talk about Book My Show, we may have noticed that a lot of payments are failing during peak time or new movie releases, right? That means
Mm-hmm.
probably our platform has scalability issues, right? Sales
Mm-hmm.
are dropping, right? So then, if I take on a new project in Book My Show, my goal probably would be to increase the payment success rate and reduce the failed transactions during high traffic periods,
Yeah, makes sense. Mm-hmm.
right? So that can be my goal. Now if you notice, it's a good goal, but I haven't defined a lot of things in this goal, so we can always improve on our goals, and I'll let you know how
Mm-hmm.
to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for now our goal is we are trying to increase the payment success rate and reduce the failed transaction rates. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I've taken a different example in the slide, but let's just go with the payment one because it will, be easier to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as we go through our initiation checks, we will check, is it feasible to do this? Like, is it cost
Mm-hmm.
effective? When I say feasible, it does not mean just technically feasible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Might be it will take you 1 year to go and do all of these checks, the entire project, and
Mm-hmm.
by then, the payment modes that you might be using right now might be outdated, right?
Mm-hmm.
By then there
Mm-hmm.
might that project might be outdated. So when you check
Mm-hmm.
for feasibility, you also check for not just technical feasibility, but also market feasibility. Will it be
Okay.
profitable for you in the end? Will it make you increase your customer base in the end? So those feasibility checks are also there, and it's not like you are the project manager so you will have to do all those checks. No, there
Mm-hmm.
might be other experts involved, but your
Mm-hmm.
job will be basically to get the go ahead from each one of them,
Okay.
right?
So how hard it is, Prerna, now that AI is evolving everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what if I have something like saying, okay, I'm going to do this in 6 months, but then AI takes over and makes it so easy that it can be that it is kind of obsolete now. So how do we actually manage that kind of unknowns, especially in the technology field when it is so different, like when it is so evolving in a very fast pace?
Good question. See, what AI has done specifically now in the tech landscape is earlier, in one sprint, probably my team was doing like 10 user story points, 20 user story points, at least 8 or 10 user story points per person. Now,
Mm-hmm.
every person in the team is probably doing more than 50 user points, right? Why?
Wow.
Because of AI. Because they can
Mm-hmm.
now code faster, because AI helps them, and you can solve your bugs very fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because AI kind of
Mm-hmm.
picks the nitty gritties very easily. Obviously you
Mm-hmm.
have to supervise it. It does not have context on what you want to do. It does not have context of your entire project. So that is where
Mm-hmm.
human intelligence comes in, but bulk of the work AI gets it done. So now it
Mm-hmm.
has become easier for us to do faster sort of implementations. But that
Right.
said, uh, right now, if I'm handed over a new project, it will be very difficult for me to gauge that, okay, will my team be able to do it in 3 months or 4 months, right? Why it will be
Right.
difficult for me is because if it's a new team, it will be difficult. If it's the same old team, then you obviously know you are working with them. But if it's a
Mm-hmm.
new team, you do not know how much. extent is are they using AI for? Because not everybody
Right.
is comfortable using it.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, how mature the team is and the technology that you will be using. So those kind of things, the estimate probably the engineering manager can give you, but
Mm-hmm.
AI has kind of improved your timelines a bit.
Okay.
But it is also complicated certain things, because now of course AI feature is needed in almost every other project, so it has kind of increased your scope also. So right now it's a double-edged sword,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for now I would say it is an asset to the project as a whole, because a lot of
Yes.
documentation, a lot of manual work is reduced because of AI.
Right. And especially when it comes to the scope definition, right?
Yeah,
And when you
yes.
with an architect, I don't know what are the stakeholders involved in the initiation part,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe an engineering manager, product manager, and a couple of other maybe from technical standpoint too. So engineering manager might say, okay, this like you give an estimate of like of not getting our resources overloaded, but also like somebody might say, okay, like why this estimation is too easy
Mm-hmm.
or too long, and with AI and all, like we can aim to do it something like early on, maybe 1 or 2 months cut off and make it. So you should have an idea of how the team is performing based on the previous velocity charts and whatnot. Or
Right.
is it like if this is something new, like agentic AI coming in,
Mm-hmm.
so should you be like making yourself updated, okay, on making sure your team is trained? Like how do we handle it, like when it comes to that kind of discussion? Like just wanted to understand that.
So usually, like I'll tell you how we are doing it in my organization. um, we are going heavily AI, right? So in a
Mhm.
lot of projects where it is possible, we are kind of introducing some AI features. So for
Right.
a lot of our teams, we have introduced a certain capacity. For my team, it is 20%. So 20%
Mhm.
of the work we have allocated to AI features,
Oh,
and
okay.
that is what we're doing throughout my teams. So when we are talking
Mm-hmm.
about when we're taking scrum of scrums, when we are taking our dailies and everything, so we are talking about AI adoption as well. So we have
Mm-hmm.
separate tickets for AI adoption, where teams are making chat box, where teams are training the models. So those discussions are happening side by side with the regular work.
So that is 20% of your work.
Yeah, I mean, I have allocated that to 20% because, like, I have major milestones to cover and I do not want to delay them. But depending
Okay.
on, what is the severity of goals for each team, they can take their own pick.
Okay, makes sense.
But that is happening like throughout the organization. So you can say that, uh, as an organization, probably in the next 2-3 quarters, they will make a great headway into the AI adoption.
So it's basically determined by the organizational strategy, right? Like it's not like your project has to deal with it by yourself. Like it's mostly
Usually, what I
organization.
have seen throughout the industry is that organizations push it first. They want the leadership to know that we are encouraging AI adoption, and they don't want basically people to use their own AI agents, because they don't want company information to be leaked into different chat boxes.
Mm,
Like people
mm,
might use a chat
mm,
GPT for their
mm,
personal
mm,
mail ID, and just so instead of
mm.
that, they give access to a particularly trained model, maybe a private
Yeah,
model for their
enterprise
purposes,
level. Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's where you can share your code and improve your code. So that is
Mm.
what companies are doing right now. Most of the companies are doing this first to kind of safeguard their code and their privacy.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
Like that's the first step, and of course they go further with everything.
Mm,
But that's the
mm.
bare minimum that every company would be doing right now.
Right, makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So now coming back to our project initiation. So the first thing that we do here is we understand the goal of the project, right? The business need. Now, usually the business need is not defined by us, the project sponsor or the customer. They are the ones who will be defining that need. Why are we undertaking this project? So you need to get the clarity from them, whosoever has
Mm,
assigned you that project,
mm,
right? So what you will cover there is, why are we doing this project? What do we stand to gain? What is their goal? Because your goal might be launching a website, but there is also a greater goal, which might be by launching this website, we anticipate 20% increase in sales, right? So your launching of the website would be your launch, but the project, right? So that would also be a project success. But the real success would be when you land the project, and landing the project is when you achieve that metric of 10 to 20% increase in sales, right? So success is both those things. So that is something that you define right during the initiation phase.
Okay, so it is only complete when you do both of this, right? Basically, launching a like a website, but also making sure that this metrics is certain metrics is met, right?
Yes. So depending on what was your goal during initiation. So if you notice, the goal during my initiation was payment success rate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if this is my goal, now I have not set any percentage. I want to reduce the
Mm,
failed
mm,
transactions, but I
mm,
didn't
mm,
say by 5%, 10%, 20%,
mm,
right? I didn't say in how
mm,
many months,
mm,
right?
mm,
So
mm,
even if I reduce like 1%, I would say it's success, right?
mm, mm,
So
mm.
technically it shouldn't be a success, but because now the goal I set was very vague,
Ah,
right? So that is why this is not a good goal, because it doesn't tell
okay,
me, it tells me that payment success rate should go up and failed transactions should go down, but by how
okay,
much, by when, right?
makes
So
sense.
those and these are the kind of goals that your organization will give you. Now you will have
Mm,
to get out of them that, okay, by how much uh, it should
mm,
go down or go up, by when do you
right.
need this, right? Those kind of
Mm.
discussions you need to have if the goal is unclear,
Okay.
right?
So, for example, Prerna, getting back to my experience, right? Like where, we launched a new portal, like for to improve the developers' productivity.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a TPM. But I would assume if we have to give it to a TPM and say, okay, I want to develop a portal to increase developers' productivity by 40-50%.
Right.
That means you are, as a TPM, you are also responsible for the adaptation of your product, of the portal, is it?
Again, that depends on what the management's expectations are, because see, we do not want to uh, increase our work necessarily, because sometimes
Okay.
even the organization is experimenting with something. Let's say you trained
Mm-hmm.
an AI model, and you
Mm-hmm.
want the organization to kind of the entire people in your organization to adapt to that AI model, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you do not know if this will be a success or a failure, so you don't want to pin that on the TPM that they will be the ones who will try to get the adoption up, right? that
Okay.
is the that is the decision made by management. Do we want our marketing teams, do we want our HRs to push it, or our engineering managers to push it to the
End
employees,
user.
or is it a
Yeah.
one TPM who will be driving it? So we don't know. So that's why you ask the questions. Your job is not to be very specific, because see, I
Okay.
have taken this example that it should reduce by 10% within 6 months,
Uh,
but
mm,
sometimes it happens that we work in a very vague industry. Sometimes even
right.
the management is kind of experimenting with stuff. They do not know how much time
Right.
it will take, but they just need to get it done. So maybe you don't have a
Mm-hmm.
timeline, which is okay, but at least you need to document it somewhere that right now we don't have a timeline restriction, but we are expecting it to be done by Q4 next year, right?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Whatever is vague, you write that. Whatever is not mentioned by management, you write that too, because at the end of the day, nothing should come to you that you didn't discuss it, right?
Okay.
So you cover all your bases, is all I'm saying.
Okay. So, okay to have this kind of specific goal, but also make sure that it is, you write a disclaimer saying that this is not like something that, uh, that we are going to like achieve in certain date, like, but maybe it'll be.
Depending on the conversation, sometimes they set hard goals that, within 6 months our license is expiring, so
Oh,
that's a hard deadline, right? Then it's like you will document it, this needs to be done within 6 months.
okay,
But
okay, okay,
sometimes it's vague also. So depending on
okay.
the conversation and your understanding of the goal, you need to communicate that clearly to your teams, and have that in writing, so that at the end of the
Mm,
project you can show it, this is what you signed up for, this is what I have delivered,
makes sense.
right? So that is our step one, which was to clearly communicate the goal.
Mm,
Now let's
mm,
talk about the scope of it all. Right? So we covered what needs to be done. Now we
mm,
need to cover, in order to do this, what are we going to, what are the steps that we are going to, and not the
mm,
steps as in the detailed versions, but basically
mm,
to increase, the payment success rate, what milestones we are supposed to achieve, right?
mm,
So in our case, I've just given an example here.
mm,
So let's say, in our scope, it is that we want to optimize the entire backend of how the payment algorithm works, right?
mm,
If it
mm,
fails, then we want to if we want the user to go through a retry payment flow, right?
mm,
If
mm,
one kind
mm,
of payment is failing, then we want to auto switch between those providers, right? And
mm,
because
mm,
we said during high load this is failing, so we want to conduct very good regression testings at heavy load, so that we know that
mm,
this
mm,
all the new code is working under high traffic,
mm.
right? So this is something that I can say it's in scope for my project. Now we
Yeah.
talk about, and it's very very important, people always write what is in scope, but most project managers, they have those discussions, but they don't document what is out of scope,
Mm,
right?
mm,
What that happens is, when this happens, you have not documented anything, you don't have it signed. So at the
mm,
middle of the project, when you're having your demos, customers
mm,
ask for one thing after the other.
mm,
Now, if
mm,
you have
mm, mm.
clearly documented in the starting that this is out of scope, then you can show them this document that this was out of scope, this
Right.
is something that we discussed. Right?
Mm,
And then you charge your
mm,
CRs accordingly if they still push for it. And most times customers, they just tell you, okay, we had that discussion, let's put a pin on it, let's take it to the next phase and everything. So it's
mm,
very
mm,
important to also document the out of scope items. For example, I am
mm,
talking here about increasing the payment success rates. I am not talking
mm,
about redesigning the entire application or website. So no
mm, mm,
redesignings will be done, right?
mm,
I'm not talking about adding new payment methods or new features here. We are improving
mhm,
the existing ones, right?
mhm,
And again, we're not rebuilding anything. The app
mhm.
layout or the website layout is not being changed. We are just doing changes in the backend to be more efficient,
Okay, makes
right?
sense.
So basically, front end will not be a part here. It will be a part, but not the anything related to payments will be impacted. Nothing outside of it will be impacted in the front end department, right? So
Makes
we have
sense.
set our scope very clearly. So in our demos,
Yeah,
if somebody would take that point, we can you just ask people to refer to this document, that these are out of scope items,
right.
right? And
So is it,
yeah, yeah,
sorry, Prema,
go ahead.
is it possible to define all the in scope and out of scope? This is very customer facing. It's easy to
Mm-hmm.
actually bring out all the subtasks that is necessary to do this, the bigger one.
Mm-hmm.
But what if the scope is like very abstract and it is kind of new, like not scope, the business need is very abstract and vague and new, and you are not able to like break it out into in scope and out scope. Like
Very, that's a very good
who
question.
is going to help you out in this definition of in scope and out of scope?
Uh, that's a very good question, and I'll tell you how it works in reality. Because I have picked a less complex problem, but in real life, projects are much more complex and abstract than this, right? And that
Mhm.
is why I am not the one having those discussions with the customer or the sponsor myself. I have a set of people. I have my product managers, my business people. I have my technical, leaders also there. I have some system architects there, right? So we are all brainstorming together on what will be in scope and out of scope. And maybe I don't have the, technical know-how, or I don't have enough experience to, optimize those kind of projects, right? But maybe someone who is experienced enough in that domain in your entire group of brainstormers, and he will be the one raising those questions, right? And you will confer with that person that, what do you think, can be a problem here, and those discussions. And that is why these discussions take time. It's not a one day job. You have repeated discussions with your customer, then you go back to your organization, and then you then confer with your team regarding, what is ambiguous, what is vague here, let's clarify this a bit more. So it
Yeah.
happens in a few iterations, and after that you have a clear document of what is in scope, what is out of scope.
Okay.
And
Makes sense.
again, a good point you raised is, it's, I guess, I won't be able to say it's possible to pinpoint everything, because see, this is only limited by human knowledge, right?
Right.
And sometimes the expert might know tens of different things, but there are
Mm.
concerns of time. He might be more concerned about one particular feature, and he's not paying
Mm.
attention to the other features.
Mm.
So it's not
Mm.
humanly possible to list all in scope and out of scope items,
Mhm.
but we're talking about the major milestones here. Usually what
Okay.
happens is, if the customer is requesting smaller set of features, something which will require less effort on your part, you just give it to them,
Mm.
right? Because
Mm.
that's
Mm.
how you do customer delight, and you want to kind of have that sort of
Satisfied.
camaraderie with the customer.
Mm.
You give them
Mhm.
a bit of freebies as well. But
Mm.
this is done to kind of control the narrative, that we are not going to go completely, creeping up on our scope just because the customer is asking for new and new things every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
this is what you do to control the scope, but along the ways, there might be more details coming up, and that is why this will be a contract. But again, if at a later point of time you find such kind of features which will take you a huge amount of time to do, and it has not been discussed, you either go for change management, or you update these documents and get a confirmation again,
Mm.
right?
Okay. Okay. Change. Okay. One other question, like, is TPM, like, since you brought about the domain expertise,
Mhm.
so are TPMs expected to be a domain expertise in all of this? Like, because I went through one of the TPM 101 training, just
Yeah.
one of the thing, and they said there is a different types of TPMs. One is
Yeah.
breadth TPM, depth TPM, and spot on TPM.
Yeah.
So, like, are we expected to be a domain expertise in whatever
It
we
makes
like
our
wherever?
life easier if we are SMEs.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you're working on a supply chain management project.
Mm-hmm.
Right
Mm-hmm.
now, if you know the domain really well of how supply chain management generally works, you're able to have those discussions in depth.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's so many, it's a huge domain. So if you get stumbled on what is first mile, what is inbound packages, outbound packages, if you do not know the definitions, it'll be very difficult for you to comprehend what the other experts are saying,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Similarly with tech domain, if they are talking about content delivery networks, and they are talking about terabytes, petabytes of data, and you're not able to relate which one is greater, which one is lesser, right? And that happens to the best of us.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes your job very hard to understand the context of what they're talking about. And if you're in those
Mm-hmm.
meetings and you're not understanding what they're talking about, that is a red
Mm-hmm.
signal for you that, okay, how am I going to coordinate between different people when I don't understand what's going on? That happens a lot with TPMs if they're not SMEs.
Okay.
But again,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a prerequisite, I would say, that you know everything, because that
Mm-hmm.
is how you learn and you grow. You go to one meeting where you don't understand things, instead of just being a silent listener, you ask questions, you ask for ways you can improve, you ask for documents where you can read up on stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and you become an SME in like eventually. That is at least the expectation.
Okay. I was talking in terms of like when I apply for an interview or like sorry job. So should I be looking just at the things or the domains that I have worked on previously, or should I be going into finding different domains that I'm interested in? Like that was the reason I asked this question. But yeah,
See,
I think it,
interview, I would say first go breadth first. Like, what are the different roles you played and what are the different responsibilities you have in your project?
mm-hmm.
And then you go depth first. And depth
Mm-hmm.
really, really impresses, and depth is something that we need eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that like non-negotiable here. Breadth first will just give them an overview of what was your project, what did you do, what were all your responsibilities. But of course, when they ask you something specific about, one of your responsibilities, you have to go in depth.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly it will be around, what was the project, what was the architecture, how did you go about it. So those kind of
Yeah.
questions you need to go depth first.
Okay, makes sense. Okay. Okay, got it.
Okay. So, in our initiation example, we first defined the need, we then defined the scope. Now we come on to listing the deliverables, right?
Mm.
So, again, these are very high level deliverables,
Right.
right? So, for our example, I have mentioned, maybe an API which is very efficient, a high speed API. We
Mm.
mentioned load testing, so we can give them a load testing report,
Mm.
uh, a retry user flow, right? So all of these are deliverables that we can provide the customer. And these are not deliverables that you will give them time to time. These are like when you finally launch it, these are some of the
Mm.
deliverables that the customer will have to sign off on, that you have
Mm.
given them all of this,
Mm.
right? So I've mentioned everything like documentation and updated SOPs, any training that the user might want, everything that you
Mm.
need to give them is provided here. If it's something is not here and they are asking you, then you have the option to refuse,
Okay.
right? And you keep in mind that I have given all of the deliverables here. Like training is not something that you
Yes.
can have a document on. Now training might be just
Mm.
a one session training. Training might be a 1 week training,
Mm.
right? So
Mm.
again,
Mm.
if you know the specifics, if you have those discussions, be very specific about these things.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So, for example, if I have a question, like if I have a business scope of launching a new site or something,
Mm-hmm.
and would a deliverable be something of a performance metrics? Like, okay, I need to this site to be available 99.99
Yes,
percentages. Is
yes.
that a part of a deliverable too?
See, if it's discussed and it's a customer requirement that this site needs to have 99.99% deliverable availability, then yes, it needs to be. It's not a deliverable, I would say, because deliverable is you delivering and launching a high performance site. What
Okay.
you were talking about
Okay.
is a metric, right? Availability. So
Metric, yeah.
that will be
Mm-hmm.
a part of your success criteria, which we're going to cover on next.
Okay. Makes
Right.
sense.
So this is just the list of things that you will provide the customer and he will sign off upon. Right.
Okay.
So
Makes
that's
sense.
just
Like
it.
some artifacts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the artifacts that you will give him. Now we come on to the success criteria. Because
Mm.
even after
Mm.
giving all of this, you cannot guarantee that your project is success.
Mm.
Right. So now we come on to the success criteria. Now this could be, metrics basically. What measures your success? So we said we want payment success rates to be increased. So
Mm.
I've written here 20% increase in payment successes. Then you
Mm.
talk about transaction times probably.
Mm.
Maybe
Mm.
earlier it was taking 10 seconds, 8 seconds. Now you've
Mm.
made it very
Mm.
efficient. Now it
Mm.
takes 2 to 3 seconds. Right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
that time drop is also one metric. Then you have fewer support tickets. Basically, failure rates are dropping. I've written here support tickets, but how do you calculate like failure rates? People come up to
Mm.
you saying my payment has. So, I've had that metric. You can even call it 10% failure rates dropping. That is also a metric, right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
now what I've done, this is all repeated if you see. We've already talked about this in the goal. right? But now
Yeah.
it makes my success very measurable.
Mm.
And why this step is important is sometimes during the goal setting, you know, uh, that discussion might not come up. The sponsor might not know a few things, so your goal is vague. But with this step, you are basically, having those discussions forcibly that, give me some metrics. How do I achieve my success? So now they're forced to have those discussions that, okay, you give it to us in like 6 months, you give us a 20% increase in 6 months. So those discussions will be facilitated here as well. Okay.
And this has to be this has to be discussed with the customer and signed off from them. Like
So this will be discussed. You will write it. I'll come to that. So basically, all of these things we're discussing, we'll put it in a project charter, or sometimes it's.
I lost you.
Oh, is it? Is it better now? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I'm able to hear you back.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, all of these things we are discussing, we'll put together it in a presentation, in a kickoff meeting, or in a project charter.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're having that kickoff meeting, we're gonna display everything to all the stakeholders present in that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
These things will be emailed to them, and we will get a sign off from them for all of these things combined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay.
Right. So right
Mm.
now we've had these discussions, we've set our success criteria. Now is when we take our stakeholder checks. Right.
Mm.
Now
Mm.
stakeholders are people who will basically be influenced by the project or have the power to influence it. Right.
Mm. Mm.
So that
Mm.
might be your leadership, that might be the customer leadership, this might be your project team, your QA team, your product director of product, director of engineering, those sort of people, right?
Mm. Mm.
And during the starting of the project, you might not have all these stakeholders, right?
Mm.
Or
Mm.
there might be a different set of stakeholders. For example, at that time, system architect might be playing a very important role to brainstorm all
Mm.
of those things. But later
Mm.
on, system architect will move to different projects and discussions, and he won't be the one implementing it,
Mm.
right?
Mm. Mm.
So, who the stakeholders are going to be, that is kind of the discussion that you will have here,
Okay.
right? So, who from product leadership will take up the project, who will be the product owner, who will be the TPM, those kind of things, who will be the scrum master, those kind of things will be discussed here.
So when you said about the architect who just gives the idea and sets up the project and
Mhm.
scope and leaves off, he's not a stakeholder here, right?
He can be, depending on how your organization is working. A lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
the system architect who has been throughout those discussions will be the best person to lead it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in some
Mm-hmm.
organizations, the architect might be too high level a player to be involved in the implementation. So he
Right.
will probably have just a consultant role. So he can be a stakeholder who you need to keep informed of things, but then he's not a major player in it. He has done his work, he has reviewed the design, he has given his go ahead, but now the implementation team will take over. So depending on how your organization is working and it's set up, stakeholders might have different roles.
Because the reason why I'm asking is there are some common themes, right? Like teams like data science team who
Mm-hmm.
just comes in and helps us with the ML models and
Right.
like just to give out them like will like so I presume they will not be stakeholders because they go around like into
They will be
different projects.
stakeholders. See, even that system architect is a stakeholder. Everybody who has to do anything with the project is a stakeholder. Because if they
Okay,
don't,
okay.
the data science team, they don't do their jobs well, then your project will be impacted, right?
Right, okay,
So they will be
okay.
stakeholders, but they are. We'll cover that next. But they are different sets of stakeholders, right? So your
Mm,
CEO
mm,
might also be a stakeholder because he also is affected
mm.
by a project. But then he is
Right.
not a stakeholder who you need to inform every day, or who you will,
Mm,
keep on disturbing with the project updates.
mm,
He is a
mm,
very high
mm.
level player,
Right.
right? So
Makes
you
sense.
probably
Makes
will just send him a quick update, or a newsletter about your project, probably once a month. That's his level
yeah.
of engagement, right? Because he's too senior level of a player. So
Yeah.
different stakeholders, we classify them. And why we
Okay.
classify them is like how involved
Communication.
you need to be into
Okay.
informing those stakeholders. So
Right.
they're all
So,
stakeholders, but we'll define how to deal with them.
okay, makes sense. So each stakeholder has their own line of communication that we have
Right.
to like make sure that we align, like maybe group them together to
Yes,
to
exactly.
channel the communication. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So right now we won't be making those sort of plans because uh, that we'll do in planning. In
Mm.
planning, we'll see, what are the different kind of stakeholders, how to analyze and group them together, how to communicate with them. That is all planning part. Right
Okay.
now, we
Okay.
are just taking a quick check of what our stakeholders are at this point
Okay.
of time. And these stakeholders might change over time also. During planning, you might have different stakeholders,
Oh, okay.
right? Because these are your high level stakeholders. So here
Mm-hmm.
I've mentioned QA team, right? I
Mm.
haven't mentioned who will be the people from QA team, because at this point
Mm-hmm.
of time it's very initial stages of the project. You might not have the entire
Mm.
set of people who
Mm.
will be working. You will need someone from the QA team, you will need
Mm.
someone from data science team, right? So high
Mm.
level,
Mm. Makes sense.
right? The next we talk about is the resources, right? Now resources is basically what all you need during the project. Now it might be the budget, it might be the people, right? Like how many people do you need? uh, do you need any tools? What sort of time do you need? uh, is it in-house? Do you need vendors? All of those things are decided when you have discussions regarding the things that you need for your project.
But how come it's possible to come up with resources if you haven't done the planning or
Exactly,
estimation?
yeah, good question. See, as I said, every discussion around the initiation is very high level,
Mm-hmm.
right? So and that is why we have a group of experts brainstorming with us. So what are those
Mm.
experts are like? They are high level players who probably done similar projects before. So they have a
Mm.
ballpark idea of, with this kind of scope, what are we looking at? Can we do it with 4 5 engineers? Okay, fine. Do we need more?
Mm.
So they have some
Mm.
context. Maybe they have done a bigger project than this with 6 engineers,
Mm.
so they know that you don't need six, maybe 4 or 5 is enough. So they'll give
Mm.
you that
Mm.
ballpark idea. So they're all experienced level players in the project initiation meetings.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So they'll give you a better idea, right?
Okay. Wow.
Again,
So
these
for
are estimations. When we'll do the
okay.
planning, because we'll have very detailed milestones or a very detailed work breakdown structure, that is when
Mm.
we'll be able to say very, very clearly. But even the ballpark kind of remains a good guess because they are basing it on empirical evidence. They have experience,
Okay. Mm.
right? So
Okay.
again, these are
Yes.
estimations and these are high level estimations because we don't have the exact details yet.
Okay.
And sometimes, to be honest, TPMs do not really involve in the budget in most organizations. So depending on what your organization is and how much involved you are in the budget part, you can choose to skip it or include it. And in most organizations, you will have like a business analyst or a team who will be separately managing the budget. So you might want to get a confirmation from them, or get a estimate from them regarding the budget of the project. You won't be handling it
Oh,
alone.
so how does the budget really impact our planning, Prerna? So how
So,
does
for
it
example,
actually?
uh, you know, uh, you have taken, let's just talk about, you've taken $1 million, right, for one
Mm-hmm.
project for the
Mm-hmm.
whole year. And now you're talking about for the whole year, you want to, have around 8 9 member team. So
Mm-hmm.
now they will be the ones who will be assessing 8 9 member team. There might be seniors, juniors into that team. What are their salaries for 1 year? Then they'll be also using company resources. So they will
Mm-hmm.
be looking at the financial feasibility of your project. Is it
Mm.
feasible only if you do it in 6 months? Is it fine for 1 year? Those kind
Mm.
of discussions they will be having. You might not be the part of these kind of discussions. There might be sales team involved, there might be other teams involved in here, but at the end
Mm.
you will be the one taking the key in from them that okay, what is our budget for this project. For example,
Mm,
if you say 6 months but you take 8 months, then of course the budget will be impacted.
mm. So based on it, will we go back and reduce the scope, or like will we do that kind of changes? Like, is it iterative?
So usually what happens is, if you're working in product based companies, they have like larger budgets, and they have like so even if they tell you to do it in 6 months, they have like buffer budgets and everything, so
Mm,
they
mm,
don't really
mm,
do it. And even for organizations who rely on sales and everything, they already have their products priced in such a way that you end up making, either a good customer acquisition, which defiles the cost, or you end up making a profit. So those discussions the finance and the sales team have within themselves,
mm,
because
mm.
for most organizations who are selling some sort of a product, uh, their sales would already be made by the time you come in as project manager. The sale would have been made already.
Mm, 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 mm. But have you operated in a tight budget project, like where you have to make sure that each and every resources is counted and tallied for?
Yes, I have worked in some sort of these projects. Uh, Basically, as a TPM, then you have to keep a very tight deadline, because if you extend,
Oh,
then the budget will totally go out of whack. So if they mean 3 months, they mean 3 months. You can't go beyond.
mm,
So there
mm,
you have to
mm.
put a very tight leash on everything. If anything goes wrong, you highlight it right away.
Okay, okay, makes sense. Mm,
Right? So basically, we're just estimating resources right there. It's just estimates. We don't have to be very exact.
mm,
Right? And once we have all this information, then we organize the kickoff meeting. Or sometimes, if we are in older organizations, they do a whole documentation called the project charter. Right? So these documents, or the kickoff deck, basically has your goal, your scope, all the deliverables, the success metric, the stakeholders, everything. Right? So
mm,
you they may choose to call it a charter or a kickoff deck. That is fine. Right?
mm,
uh, and basically they have this meeting where everything is discussed. Right? Everything is
mm,
discussed means if there's any one who's disagreeing with what is written in, your scope and anything, those points are raised. And
mm,
after that meeting, what you get is alignment from everyone, that okay, we agree on whatever you have documented. Right? And
mm.
that basically formalizes your project, that okay, everybody is aligned, everybody has a very clear understanding of what we need to do, and then you can now plan it further and then go into execution mode.
Okay. So who is involved here in the project charter kickoff meeting? Is the customers
Every
also?
one of the stakeholders, in customer
Okay.
side, usually customer side also have a designated project manager who will be managing from their side.
Uh-huh.
So those project managers are there, maybe some customer leadership are also there.
Okay.
Right? And any, like for example, for customers might have one representative from operations side, from finance side. So all of those stakeholders will be there, your stakeholders in your company will be there. Basically, it's to
Mm,
align everybody that this is what we're going to do. So all stakeholders involved are usually
mm.
present in the kickoff meetings.
Okay. All stakeholders. Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I'll give you the notes of this. So basically,
Mm,
I've also given some, apart from Book My Show, I've also given like some extra examples, just so that you can have a go at it yourself.
mhm,
Right? Now
mhm,
let's talk about the documents that we make during this.
mhm,
Obviously,
mhm,
I've already told you about the kickoff deck to the project charter. Right?
mhm,
In
mhm,
detail what it contains, we've already discussed that the goal, the scope,
mm,
the resources, timelines, stakeholders, these kind of things can be in the charter.
mm.
Right? uh, when I used to make charters, I would also provide them the high level risks that I could foresee during our discussions.
Okay.
Right? So depending on what kind of discussions you had, you can involve risks as well.
Mm,
Then we come on to stakeholder register. Now this is
mm,
something that you can have, during initiation, or you can do it during planning. This is basically
mm,
the names of all your stakeholders, and basically analyzing them. So usually I do it in the planning phase, but I've seen some people doing it, like making this registered during the initiation phase as well.
Mm, mm,
Right?
mm,
Feasibility analysis document is not something that you make. Uh, it's usually the business analyst who make it,
mhm,
right? But I'm just mentioning it over here because these documents might come up during those meetings, so you should know what these documents usually contain,
mm, mm,
right? So here it is written RACI matrix. Again, this is a planning level documentation, but sometimes with very litigious organizations, they want you to create their early drafts during planning sessions as well, like who is the responsible accountable person for different kind of activities.
mm,
Right, we'll cover it in detail in the planning phase and just
mm.
introducing some of the docs that might come up during this phase.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, now there are three things. Logs is something that you should be maintaining right from the get-go, right?
Mm,
What does that mean is logs of assumptions. Maybe the customer is assuming something, maybe your organization is assuming something. So if there's any assumptions that are made, you need to have an assumptions log where you're mentioning that these are the assumptions that we are operating under,
mm,
right? Similarly with the constraints, that we have a fixed budget, we can't go beyond that. So any sort of
mm,
constraints are there, you mention that in the constraints log. Similarly, we have a
mm,
risk log as well, and that is why I
mm.
maintain that also, that if there are any risks that you foresee or they are discussed in the meeting, you mention that in the risk log then and there.
Okay. Uh,
It kind of helps
so,
you plan things better because you have more
oh,
visibility this ways.
so assumptions and constraints log, when you are too specific like this, like again, I hope it comes from domain expertise or architect
Mm-hmm.
or someone who's helping through this, like because API response time will not exit 1 second. We already have a success metrics that's defined. So this is more
No, no, no.
assumption.
See,
Uh,
success metric is that, uh, the customer response time is different. We are talking about the API
mm,
response time,
mm,
right?
right, right,
Now, for the customer, the entire flow should not take more than 2-3 seconds. That
right,
is our.
right,
But now,
right.
if during the call, if my API is taking like 2-3
Mm,
seconds in itself, then how will I
mm,
put my response
mm,
back to the customer?
mhm,
Right? So that is
mhm.
why we are operating under the assumption that response time is fine. We don't have to work on that one.
Okay, makes sense. Mhm,
Right? Now let's talk about some of the interview questions that might be asked. Right? So
mhm,
how do you define a project scope during initiation? Basically, they are asking you what sort of discussions you have regarding the scope of the project. It's very important to mention here that you do have discussion about out of scope items as well. you know
mm, mm,
it was
mm,
also important to mention that you have those discussions early on, that if something arises out of scope during the course of the project, other than the
mhm,
things that are mentioned here, how do we approach it? Do we take a change management route? Do we take a phased approach, right, where all the
mhm,
changes will be done in phase 2? So those
mm,
discussions you might have beforehand. That shows your
mm,
maturity as the TPM.
mm, mm, mhm,
So they will give you a vague question like this: how much details
mm,
you put in your answer, that sets you apart as a TPM,
mm, mm, mm,
right? Then the
mhm,
docs you create in initiation phase. We've already covered this, but again,
mhm, mhm,
the more detail you give, the better your answer is,
mhm, mhm,
right?
mhm.
Uh,
Makes sense.
this one I don't think that's mostly for product owners, so let's just not do this one.
Mm,
How do you align multiple stakeholders early in the project? Right, by having those discussions about what is feasible, what is logging everything like risks and everything, documenting everything, and then taking a sign off after kickoff.
mm.
Right, so
Okay,
just go into
okay,
detail about the entire process and you'll be able to align the stakeholders.
okay.
Right, now what metrics do you track during initiation? As we mentioned, the assumption log, the constraint log, the risk log, right? The success metrics, all of those things you can mention. right? And usually they just want you to talk through, if you are given a new project, how would you go about it?
Mm.
So at those kind of questions, go in detail about initiation and planning phase, and you're good to go.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So is this all like new, or this is something that you've already seen and you can kind of see how you will be able to answer these questions in the interview?
I have seen this, but when it comes to artifacts, I have no direct. I have not directly seen these artifacts like Reiki metrics
Okay.
or the stakeholder register.
Yeah,
Um,
no worries on that. I'll anyways provide you some samples so that you have some, you know, real world documents that you can refer as a reference for you.
Yeah, that is I have all like I all know about like different things, but structuring this,
Mm-hmm.
like how the way you structure it, step one, step two, step three, like that is something I have to learn going forward. Like in the
Mm-hmm.
sense, I know it all in a big mix of salad bowl. Like I have to now make it structurally, like yeah, like presentable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is what I have to do. It's all chaotic right now, but structuring it like how you did it would really help um, in the interviews, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense, of course. So now, I mean, obviously, I will share the notes, but what you should do right now, like after the class or whenever you have time, is now
Mm,
try to structure your thoughts around. Let's imagine you're in an interview and they ask you, how do you go about things? So, how will you structure your own answer? What is, have that clarity of thought, like, I'll do this first, then I'll do that first. Why am I
mm,
doing this? So, all of
mm,
those
mm.
questions should be at least clear to you.
Right, right. So since I'm actually preparing for the delivery part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can write, but because you have this pauses and to think about what you want to like say, what you want to write next.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to delivery on impromptu delivery, it's hard. So maybe I would do some kind of audio, like myself, like record my audio, like
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about
sure.
in my own language, like what I would want to do and how I want to structure this whole
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
process.
Like, just I would say first you do it in writing,
Yeah, makes
okay?
sense.
When you think your writing has now gotten enough structure, then you try to
Mm.
practice it. That'll be faster.
Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah, because like when you try to practice, you'll like just impromptu, you will lose the confidence. Okay, this is not
Yeah,
coming
and
to
you
me.
might lose some information too. Like, you might forget to say something.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay,
Practice
just
recording.
have like one document, even share it with
Mm.
me also,
Yeah, sure,
right? And like try to better your answer and everything, and probably in the next class we can go over that answer also.
sure, sure.
Sure.
And one quick thing, will you be sharing this document with
Yeah, yeah,
me?
yeah, I
Okay,
will.
because I have been trying to frantically take notes from your
Oh,
document, but
no, no,
like,
don't bother about taking notes. I'll share
okay,
everything. Just pay
okay.
attention in the class. You don't need anything else.
Okay, so what I'll do is maybe one thing also comes to my mind. I have different ideas, but when it comes to implementation, that's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I was thinking, maybe like take an example from from my experience and see like like write it out how I would structure all this and bring about different components. But yeah, maybe like how you took this book my show